Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, a podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. And now your host, David Ginsburg.
Welcome to Tales from the Fandom, the podcast that brings a special guest out of the multiverse and straight to you. Today's podcast is actually a very special episode. It's our first episode ever talking about a Kickstarter project specifically. And this Kickstarter came across because one of my previous guests, Royce, who was on episode 2, is involved in it as a writer. The Kickstarter is called Project 13 Dark, and just as a little side before we bring Eden in, that 13 Dark is a unique project that will showcase both the written and visual artwork of some of this century's greatest creatives. So let's talk about this Kickstarter. Thank you so much, Eden, for coming back on to talk about this.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on, David.
Not a problem. So I was saying before we started recording that I follow everybody that I record with, and we're friends off of, not even before the podcast, we were friends and gamers together, and I always follow what you're doing, and this kind of came out of nowhere, and not to mention that you've got this really strong tagline of some of the century's greatest creatives are involved in this project, so that's a pretty strong and bold choice to go there.
Yes, the editor and the mind behind the project, Joe Sale, is the one that approached me about being involved with the project. And he told me some of the names involved, and I thought, oh, am I worthy to be on this project? But it is something that I think is a different and unique way of presenting dark fiction, because a lot of times dark fiction writing is not associated with literary, and it's not associated with being a high art form. So a lot of people think of authors who write dark fiction, specifically anything horror, to be, well, for lack of a better term, lower on the literary scale. And this project is designed to change that. It's working with authors, it's working with artists to put together a beautiful experience in horror with writers from different parts of the world that bring horror from their experience, along with artists like Grand Failure and Sean Langley, who do stunning horror imagery to bring horror into what it really should be, is a beautiful experience for the reader and for the viewer in this case with 13 Dark.
Okay. And as we're recording this is April 12th. I'm looking at the pledge page right now. It has 22 days to go. So by Friday, May 5th at about 4 o'clock in the morning is when the project ends. So there's plenty of time to get involved with the project. What made you, when you were approached to be a part of it, what really made you want to commit to something like this?
Well, I think several things. A lot of times indie writers struggle for viewership and struggle for readership, especially in a world that can be flooded with traditionally published books, with indie published books. To be with a project that wants to pay attention to your view of a subject, to give you free rein to do what you want, that isn't looking at what does this publisher want to publish? What's the trend in horror fiction right now? How can I write something that's going to get accepted and going to get published? And I think the big thing was the freedom to write what I wanted and to write a story that spoke to me without having to be channeled into a certain theme. That's a huge opportunity for a writer. And to have custom artwork and to work directly with the artist to do cover and internal art is something that's rarely found nowadays. We're harkening back to an earlier era of leather-bound hardcover books that had internal artwork. So being able to work one-on-one with an artist is a phenomenal thing as well. And artistry is so important, I think, especially with genre like horror, because it's sometimes looked down upon, and to have it elevated in this manner is a unique thing.
Reading over what the project's goal is, the aim is to release 13 unique, never-before-seen short stories monthly in digital and paperback, with custom artwork from Sean Langley and cover artwork by Grand Failure, which that's an interesting name right there. Are the stories geared towards any particular part of darkness or like horror or whatnot, or is it more like it's up to each writer, but you as writers all have like maybe a guidebook or a style book that you're all trying to maybe cover or not step on each other's toes as far as writing?
I don't think anyone's too worried about stepping on each other's toes, but all of the work is to explore the sacred and profane as general guidelines, whether it's angels, demons, or a more subtle way of looking at the holy and the damned. That's the guideline that we've been given. Other than that, free reign to do what you want. You think of certain things that have that sort of subtle supernaturalism, True Detective, South of Hell, Constantine, things like that have that supernatural edge with just the undertone of holy and damned and creatures above and below is the guideline that we've been given. Other than that, there's going to be stories that have an upbeat ending. There are going to be stories that have more of a tragic ending. There are going to be stories set. One I know has already been written, which is the first one, Bethesda. That is actually set in England, here in the United Kingdom, where I am now, by Ross Jeffrey. The second story, Under Soil, is set on Cyprus, I believe. So each author is able to bring where they're from to this project, and I think that is an amazing opportunity for any writer. In addition, I think part of the beauty of this with the Kickstarter is some of the rewards that are being given out, and that's why I'd love some creatives to be able to jump on this Kickstarter, because some of the rewards are custom drawn artwork for. And if you've ever looked into custom art, it can be expensive. We're looking at $200, $300, $400+ for artwork, and sometimes you'll need maybe more than one piece. So for some of these rewards, you're able to get custom drawn artwork for a much lower price than that. So I think it's definitely something to look into doing, as well as, of course, supporting lots of indie writers.
Absolutely. And there was one reward, I'm looking for it right now as I'm scrolling, that there's one pledge. It's called the Dreamer, and it's actually a limited one as we're talking. There's 28 slots left of the 30. It's about $100 because of the exchange rate. And one of the things that's in there is that a custom cover will be created specifically for the book. And then you have writing coaching and proofing for a full-length manuscript up to 100,000 words.
Yeah.
Which that's pretty amazing because, I mean, I'm not familiar with, like, how big a novel is. I think it's, like, between 50 and 80,000, but that's...
Yes, 100,000 words is quite a long novel. We're getting into sort of epic fantasy territory with that length. A lot of the shorter novels that are gaining popularity now and novellas, we're looking at 50,000 words. And being an editor myself as well, I do freelance and I edit for a company. This $100 would not go a whole long way to getting your 100,000 words edited and proofed. It's it's an amazing value for what you get. In addition, you would get all 13 volumes of stories when they're released and when they come out. But I offer, depending on the book, anywhere from 3 to 5 cents a word with editing. Most companies that I work for have editing and proofing as 2 separate features, and the author will go through at least two separate experiences with 2 different people. So you'll work with an editor, and then you'll work separately with a proofer, who after your book has gone through 2 to 3 rounds of edits, the proofreader is going to be that last person that looks through it to make sure everything is where it's supposed to be. So I think it's an amazing value for someone that's going to look through, edit your book, possibly even do some light fact checking, and make sure that your book is ready for publication.
Absolutely. And I always like looking at like the most expensive like pledge, and that's the one that's right around the $1,000 mark. And for people that are doing their writing, or they're getting their stories together, or they've got something, I mean that $100 one just for the editing purposes or the reviewing of it is pretty cool. But this one, I mean, if I'm a writer and I'm trying to get something published, this $1,000 one is like you receive full writing coaching of up to the 100,000 words with like 12 Skype sessions to talk about it, detailed line-by-line editing, idea generation techniques, an analysis according to Joseph Sale's 5-act model of story writing, proofing, and more. Like, so not only are you getting what you were getting for the $100, but you're getting line-by-line editing. I can't even imagine that.
It's an intensive process, and for this project to offer that is, I haven't personally seen that with a lot of Kickstarters before, and knowing what it takes to go through a novel line by line, reading it, making sure that it's not only grammatically correct, but when they're talking line by line edits, they're also reading to make sure, has your character done something that's so foreign to the way he or she's been set up in the book that this would jar your reader and take them out of the story? That's sort of included in all of that. You're doing this well, but when we come to this section, this is something that needs reworking because you've not given us a reason why your character would act this way. We're not saying he can't. We're saying we need to know why he's doing that, or we need a hint that we're going to learn why this is happening.
Right.
So those types of things are invaluable to a writer. And to have Skype call sessions, I know with me, talking about things and talking through a plot that might not be working as is something that can be incredibly helpful when you get stuck on a project. And to have someone there dedicated to listening to you try and sort it out for your book, it's absolutely worth it. When you come out of this process, your book will be ready for you to either self-publish or possibly send to a publisher, whatever you'd like to do with it. It's about putting out a great product, and that pledge amount called the redemption is going to get you there. It's going to get you publisher ready or get your book self-publishing ready, depending on what you want to do with it.
And that is one amazing thing. You always get the Kickstarters with, you're going to get the project, or you're going to get the game, you're going to get the book, you're going to get like the T-shirt or the free. Well, I mean, I guess it's not free because you're paying for it, but you get like all these little extras. But this is the first time where I've seen something like this about like doing something for you, actually like editing something or proofreading something or giving advice about something that you are doing and that you are submitting to the people that you're supporting.
Absolutely, because what Joe Sale wants 13 Dark to be, he doesn't want it to be just a one and done. He wants to actually grow it into a community, and giving rewards like this, helping authors to get where they need to be, is something that he's incredibly passionate about, which is why I'm just honored to be sort of at the forefront of this, because I think a lot of times writing is a solitary project. You have to be alone with the computer, alone with the page in order to get your work done.
Mm-hmm.
So it can be difficult sometimes getting an understanding of how your work is going to be received, or how to maybe get your point across in a way that isn't so cliched. And those are the things that you can get from a writing community, as well as support, as well as a bit of uplifting when your spirits are flagging with your book, because it happens to all of us, sometimes more than we want to admit. And sometimes you need that support, or you need that kick in the butt to get your work done and to get your vision out there, because we're all about stories and bringing stories to the page the way that the author wants them to be, polishing work, but still making sure that the essence of the story is the author's.
Absolutely. And one of the things, we've talked about these bigger pledge levels on this Kickstarter. To initially get like the first 3 issues is only $6.
Yes.
And you get it digitally. You get a mention in the thank you section of the first issue. And, I mean, it's ready to go May of 2017. So basically, once it's done, you're going to be getting that first issue right off the bat. Yes,
and I can tell you that first issue, which, as I mentioned, is Bethesda, by Ross Jeffries. The book is written. The book has been edited. The book has cover art, which you can see on that Kickstarter page. So when May comes and that release date hits, the book is ready for you to read.
Now, how big are the books that, if people are backing this for the 13 issues, how big are, like, the stories? Are they, I imagine that they're more on, like, maybe the shorter side, like novellas, or smaller than that, or bigger?
When I was presented with the project, my target word count, because a lot of writers, we work in page count, is about 8,000 words.
Okay.
Which is on the longer side of a short story. I would say for a novella, currently 8,000 to 10,000 words. 8,000 words is still short story, I would say, long short story. And about 10,000, I would consider it short novella. So that's about where you would get. I would say probably, if any of the listeners out there have read some of Stephen King's short stories that are a little bit longer, the short story that Shawshank is based on, the short story that Stand By Me is based on, those are longer short story works getting into novella territory. So that's about 8,000, possibly a little bit more, where you'd be looking at for these tales.
Okay. So it's not like you're getting something small, you're getting something that's only a few pages. You're actually getting something of quite like a significant portion.
Right. It's not going to be, a 3-page short story and with a cliffhanger or anything like that. These are all-inclusive, complete stories that are going to be able to bring you into a world and keep you there until the end.
Now, do you know when your issue is going to be published, or is that still up in the air, just depending on what they have?
My issue is slated for January 2018.
Okay.
So mine is slated to start off 2018.
Okay. Now, as with any Kickstarter, people have to understand that this is not like a guarantee. Because if it's not funded, you're not paying for it, so therefore you're not getting anything. But it's more of a investment into the work, and then hopefully you get something, especially if it's funded. I know that I've made contributions toward Kickstarters and they haven't funded, therefore I don't get anything. I've also been on that lucky side where all of the Kickstarters I have funded have actually come through with what they were responsible for, whereas I know some people have Kickstarted projects and the project succeeds, but then the project runs out of money or doesn't actually do what they were supposed to do, and then there's no recourse for the people that have invested.
Mm-hmm. Because this Kickstarter has a fairly aggressive goal, because Joe Sale has completely committed himself to this project. He actually quit his job to work full-time on the project, so he is dedicated to getting this not just funded, but having that all-essential plan B of making sure this project comes to fruition, even if worst-case scenario, fingers crossed it won't happen, the Kickstarter doesn't get funded. So hopefully it will, and we won't have to worry about plan B, but there's definitely a plan B of making sure that we get the stories written, the artwork done, and distribution for those that still actually want to see this come to fruition.
And that's what I was going to ask, is there a plan B? But it sounds like there definitely is one already in place.
Plan B. I'm on top of it, anticipating your question.
Awesome. So it sounds like it's a good Kickstarter. There's lots of different levels. I mean, there's the level, like the $6 one where you get the first 3. It's just kind of like a little sampler of, let's just check it out and see if you like the work. I would probably say definitely go for the one to get all 13, because with each author you're going to get something different. It's not like you're getting the same story or the same thing in those first 3. You're going to be missing out on the next 10 that could be totally different or catch your eye or be something that you're into, and you've missed out.
Absolutely. And I feel like if you are a creative, if you want to choose a reward that has custom artwork associated with it, that is the way to go, because it doesn't I know it says book artwork, but if you're getting a custom created piece, you could use it for an album cover, a CD cover. You can use it for maybe a banner to promote yourself on social media. There's all sorts of things you can use that custom artwork for. So just because you may not be a writer, don't shy away from that custom artwork. And I also want to say, don't shy away from choosing one of the rewards thinking, well, I'm not really going to use the editing, or I'm not going to use the proofreading. There are definitely rewards that can be gifted. So I did ask that specifically because I do know several people that may not be writers, but still want to contribute to their favorite writer's cause. Mm-hmm. So don't feel like you have to use the reward yourself. If there's someone that you know that could benefit from it, buy it and give it as a gift. Maybe keep a book for yourself or a t-shirt for yourself. Give the artwork to someone else, or give the opportunity to have the Skype conversations to someone that you know who's a creative that might be struggling with getting their project completed. Those things can really be invaluable to people that are creatives. Having another creative say that I understand and here's what I can do to sort of help you realize your intentions.
Right, like I was looking at that $37 one called The Promise, where you get all 13 issues in digital, but then you get a writing, like a coaching session on like a short story of up to 7,000 words, or a selection of up to 7 poems, and I was like, well, I don't think I would use that because I'm not writing anything, but I definitely have people that come to mind now that you say that you could, gift something like that to someone else, and it's like almost like a boon for the person that you're thinking of.
Exactly. And it's definitely something that you can use to help encourage someone, because we all have those moments of not being able to push through. And just having a conversation can be a great way to support that person that you may not necessarily know what to say to bring them out of their creative funk, but you can say, maybe this will help you. And all of those things are in addition to the books. There are some T-shirts. There's subscriptions to Gamut magazine, which I think a yearly subscription to Gamut is somewhere around $120, where you can get that included in your reward, and it will cost you about $50, and you get all of the issues of the books as well.
Absolutely. Just out of curiosity, what is Gamut magazine?
Gamut magazine is a magazine of speculative fiction. It's mostly dark speculative fiction. It is neo-noir, it's Southern Gothic, it's certain cyberpunks. It's pretty much anything that is dark fiction, that's edgy, that's out there, that's hard to classify. Gamut is one of those places that when they do open for writer submissions, they close about the next day because they fill up that quickly.
Wow.
Yes. If they come on to Twitter or Facebook and say, hey, we're opening May 1st for submissions for Gamut magazine, they're probably closed May 2nd because they have that great of a reputation. They have a wide readership as well. So if you're able to grab a copy of it ahead of time, if you want to see what things they publish, you can do that. They've published a Stephen King story. Richard Thomas is over there. Some other names you might recognize also over there. Mercedes Murdoch Yardley is one of their editors and one of their contributors. And they also will do coaching for authors and creatives. Okay. So they're a great place to check out if you're looking for great speculative fiction stories to read, or if you're looking for a place to submit your work. But just wait till they open and don't think outside of guidelines.
Right, because everyone's got their guidelines and things that you need to follow, or else you're just going to get turned down.
Yes, I hate to say it, but it's tough out there. So just make it easier on yourself and always read the guidelines.
Always read the guidelines, that's right.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, if you go to Gamut Online, you can read a free sample of what they publish. And they always do have artwork associated with some of their stories as well. So if you just want to check out some of the things that they like to see from their authors and some of the things they publish, you can go to Gamut Online, gamut.online, and see what they've got to offer.
Okay. Is there anything I've left out that you feel we need to bring up about Project 13 Dark that maybe deserves to be talked about or needs to be talked about?
I think we've covered a lot of it. We've covered that you have about 28 days left to read through the Kickstarter and decide what you'd like to choose as your reward, what you'd like to donate to the project. We've talked a little bit about some of the stories, some of the authors, and I think it's something that is definitely needed in the writing community, and it's something that's definitely needed in the horror community, because I think a lot of times the arts are underfunded, and writers and artists tend to not always be paid what their work is worth, and I think that's what 13 Dark is trying to do as well. They're trying to pay authors, pay artists what their work is worth, and put out a fantastic, beautiful product.
And you can find this Kickstarter. It's under Project-13 Dark, or if you go to Kickstarter.com and just use the search feature and type in 13 Dark as one word, it'll pull up. Where can they find the project on social media?
13 Dark is on Facebook under Project 13 Dark. It is also under 13 Dark on Twitter. And we are always tweeting not only the project, but we're also tweeting each other's work that's outside of the project. So Project 13 Dark on Twitter, Project 13 Dark on Facebook, and we also have an Instagram page, also Project 13 Dark, where you can see some of Sean Langley's internal artwork and some of Grand Failure's cover art to help you get an idea of what we're bringing.
Excellent. And there will be links on this podcast, the information page, and on the Facebook page, and on the website for everyone to click and check out. Don't be scared by the goal that they have. It's, as Eden said, it's an aggressive goal, but it's also doing 13 issues plus artwork plus everything else that you would get along with it. So you just need to look at it as that kind of an investment if you're interested in picking up all of this great work.
Absolutely. One of the things that 13 Dark is doing as well they've reached out to London Horror Society for a mention in their newsletter, and you'll see a lot of their posters if you happen to be going to StokerCon or you're going to be at this year's Bram Stoker's Awards. Lots of their advertisement will be up there as well. And from what I understand, a lot of Kickstarter projects tend to get boosts after certain promotions and when the deadline is looming closer. So don't be afraid to contribute. There are some phenomenal rewards for doing so.
Absolutely. And if you're someone like me who always, hems and haws about it, just click on the saved button so it notifies you 2 days before the project ends. So that way you can make your decision if you need to just have some time to think about it. It saved me a bunch of times on things that I might have forgotten about or had been interested in but maybe didn't have the money right then, because you don't get charged until the Kickstarter closes anyway. But it's always good to know how much money you have in the bank before they try and charge you.
Absolutely. I will also, if you want to include it with the podcast, send you the link for the free samples of stories for Gamut online as well.
Sure, I'll have that posted too.
Great.
All right, Eden, well, thank you so much for coming on to talk about the Kickstarter, and we'll hear from you again in the anniversary episode on June 6th.
Absolutely my pleasure, David. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Tales from the Fandom. Subscribe to us on iTunes or your podcast app of choice. Follow us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/talesfromthefandom to see photos, links, leave feedback, and check out upcoming guests. If you'd like to be a guest, email David at talesfromthefandom@gmail.com.